And now the fight moves on to a new phase. And I must share with you communications we received only this morning and yesterday. As many of you have known, the labor of these many years in Ashraf has produced millions of dollars worth of property. And the MEK has contracted with a company in Britain to buy this property for a fair price. And the money would be used to support and then resettle the people of Ashraf and Liberty. Last week, the representatives of this company in Baghdad were told if they proceeded, their lives would be lost. We received a letter from Britain which said, and I quote, the following: "We assumed that this would be a straightforward agreement between seller and buyer. But as you know, for 2 months we've been experiencing difficulties, obstructions, and complications. We have spent a great deal of time and money, but all indications are that without official permission, it will be impossible to proceed." And a few hours ago, from the same merchant, please note, without permission from all parties, we cannot go forward. Let me speak clearly to the government of Iraq. You underestimated our will with the FTO. You underestimate us again. You will not steal our property. You will not take our possessions. You will not bankrupt our people. We will not forget. We will not go away. We will get fair justice for this property. And to my American friends, if someone in the American government or the French government or any European government has the nerve to tell you that we did not want to sell, that we would not sell, that we would not contract, you tell them you know better. We signed a deal, they stopped it, they threatened the people who wanted to buy our property, and we will not go away.
Because the UN and the US, to a degree as well, have not fairly enforced conditions in Liberty, the residents of Liberty are spending money on things they shouldn't have to spend money on. They have to buy fuel from Kuwait that's several times more expensive. They have to put out $2.5 million to ensure that the water system works. There are so many things that cost money that they have to finance their just living conditions, they have to be able to sell the property that remains at Ashraf. That's simple and just and fair. And the Iraqi government, with an assist from the UN, has put every roadblock possible in the way of fair disposition of that property. We have to take it on our shoulders to ensure that the UN and the US get the message to the Iraqis that there must be a fair disposition of that property. It is absolutely essential.
In fact, just yesterday, there were over 30 communications between Martin Kobler and the person trying to resolve the settlement of the personal property of the people of Ashraf. Imagine a member of the United Nations getting in the middle of a business transaction between the people of Ashraf and a business agent who's trying to resolve the settlement of their personal assets, and only to be obstructed by the UN Commissioner. Martin Kobler, you must step down as the UN Commissioner.
We have to remember the people who put their lives most at risk, some of whom have lost their lives, to make even what we've achieved possible, and that's the people originally in Ashraf and now at Liberty. First of all, Without delay, Liberty should be designated a refugee camp by the United Nations now, not later. Today, it should be done. It should have been done before. It should be done now. And second, Ambassador Kobler must live up to the promise that he made to me directly, to my colleagues directly when we all met. He gave us his word that the property of the people at Ashraf would be sold, that it would be done fairly, and it would be done properly. And so far, he has reneged on that promise. He has not lived up to that promise. And we are going to continue to dog him until he does. You don't get away with breaking promises, not to us. We will make sure that he keeps that promise.
Our combined effort now is to ensure the U.S. and the UN keep the pressure on Iraq to protect the people in Liberty and Ashraf. They must have the ability to sell their property, to fund their lives as they exist in Iraq until they can be moved or relocated to other countries. Iraq and the UN must recognize Liberty as a refugee camp, not a prison.
You know, there was no reason to relocate the residents out of Camp Ashraf while they're processed for refugee status. But Martin Kobler, I contacted him by email, called him by phone, and sent him correspondence, never responded. He gave the Mullah regime legitimacy in pulling out and closing Camp Ashraf to allow the Iraqis to pilfer, vandalize, and loot that place. The residents peaceably complied with every request. And what did they get in return? Yet Martin Kobler watches knowingly, without so much as speaking up, as the agreements he helped make to do the relocation are disregarded by the Iraqis. And the residents are systematically stripped of their property, but never their dignity.
The United States of America several years ago recognized the residents of Ashraf, once they turned over the means to defend themselves, as protected persons under the Fourth Geneva Convention. The United Nations definition of refugees is consistent with the plight and the status of the residents of Iran the residents of Liberty and the residents of Ashraf. Ironically, the Constitution of Iraq's definition is consistent with the plight and purpose in the situation with the residents of these camps. It's there. It's time for them to act. And I say to Ambassador Kobler, who've many conversations with many of us, you told me on several occasions, Mr. Ambassador, that the biggest obstacle to you doing your work, to fulfilling the commitment you made to the residents and your mission as a representative of the United Nations, the largest, most single important obstacle was the delisting of the MEK. Ambassador Kobler, they've been delisted. It's time for you to do your job. Help them sell their property, designate the camp as a refugee camp.